pensioners who will freeze to death, but allowing loads of immigrants into the country. I mean, it doesn't take a great headline writer to put the comparisons
because it's
together.
the unfairness of it,
It's
right?
unfair, exactly. So what they're now looking at is whether they are going to increase that allowance, the 11,500 income cut threshold, over which you no longer get the payment, or possibly reversing it altogether. They won't do that. And of course, they're deeply worried about reform. Now, here we go. The same line comes out of Downing Street. We had to take tough but right decisions in the budget to stabilise the economy after years of damage and decline. We all know that's nonsense. We all know the £22 billion hole doesn't exist. We know it's all fabrication. Also, the policy, the energy policy there, is expected to save the government around £1.5 billion a year, but 100,000 pensioners pushed into poverty in a developed country. Not acceptable. Then, of course, they're now going to go after people who've been really good and put money into ISIS because they believe these are really a tax-efficient way to save money, and they are. And now they're saying, well, actually, Rachel Reeves' next big idea is to reduce the limit, which is 20,000 at the moment, that you can put in there in a fiscal year, down to 4,000.
Yes.
Who made this up?
OK, so this is... I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's, again, so intellectually incoherent. So apparently the reason...
Will the thresholds remain frozen for 3 years, as the government has already announced?
I would like for taxes on working people to come down, but I'm not going to play fast and loose with the public finances. When a government does that, you get a repeat of what Liz Truss does, and frankly, it's what Rishi Sunak offered in the Conservative manifesto this week, a whole bunch of unfunded, uncosted policies that, if the Conservatives have a chance to enact, will crash our economy in the same way that Liz Truss did.
A startling new investigation into the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has raised serious questions about her expense account when working at HBOS in the run-up to the financial crisis.
The political earthquake just landed with full force. Rachel Reeves, once the Chancellor pushing the most aggressive inheritance tax reforms in decades, now finds herself in legal turmoil. This time, she isn't wielding the gavel. She's on the receiving end of a Supreme Court ruling that has frozen millions within her inherited estate.
Rachel Reeves has raised serious questions about her expense account when working at HBOS in the run-up to the financial crisis. My name's Tom Harwood and this is GBN Originals. We're going to dive into a BBC investigation, freshly published, into the works of the Chancellor before she was a Member of Parliament. Now, of course, we all know for a time Rachel Reeves worked for the Bank of England, but then moving up to HBOS, which of course was Halifax Bank of Scotland before it was broken up in the global financial crisis. She moved to their office in Leeds for a regional job. She has previously been accused of overemphasising her title at that job as an economist rather than working in retail banking, as her CV now states publicly. But that's not the story here. Indeed, the story here is slightly more concerning, indeed, if not alarming. What the BBC appears to have found is that they've corroborated a number of accounts that there was some sort of investigation into Rachel Reeves and two other managers at HBOS in Leeds into their expense.
While ordinary families struggle under brutal new tax rules, some facing six-figure bills just for inheriting a modest home, Reeves has been caught orchestrating an elaborate scheme to shield her own wealth. Official documents released this morning reveal a web of offshore accounts, trusts and pension transfers quietly rerouting assets in ways beyond the reach of the average taxpayer. This comes mere months after she assured the public that only the ultra-rich would be affected. Yet the numbers tell a different story. A family earning $20,000 with a semi-detached home now faces nearly $170,000 in taxes, while Reeves reportedly insulated her fortune from the very system she imposed.
In the budget, I delivered the most ambitious package of measures that we have ever seen to cut down on tax evasion, raising £6.5 billion per year by the end of the forecast. Today, I go further, continuing our investment in cutting-edge technology, investing in the HMRC's capacity to crack down on tax avoidance, and setting out plans to increase the number of tax fraudsters charged every year by 20%. These changes raise a further £1 billion, taking the total revenue raised from reducing tax evasion under this Labour government to £7.5 billion.
The backlash was immediate and is snowballing. For months, Reeves portrayed her policy as a crackdown on privilege, insisting the wealthiest should bear more of the burden. But behind the scenes, the reality was starkly different. Legal experts now describe her financial arrangements as a textbook case of strategic avoidance, featuring overseas trusts and asset transfers timed just before major tax changes. The Supreme Court made no excuses. In a landmark ruling, justices determined Reeves's setup wasn't merely clever, it was deliberately designed to sidestep the very system she helped create. Her estate is now under full review, with multiple assets, including real estate and retirement holdings, frozen and assessed for potential.
Lowering the annual tax-free allowance is in an effort to push more people to invest in shares.
In more risky
because she wants to promote investment in British businesses. I mean, well, look, fine, but can we just be really blunt about this? ISAs are, one of the safest ways, perhaps, if you're moving into retirement or you're older person. That's sort of a safe place to put your money to provide additional income when you most need it at the end of your working life. Frankly, some of the people who are choosing to invest in cash ISAs now, they don't have the option of investing in shares because shares can take a long time to show a dividend or return. And frankly, if you're at the end of your getting towards the end of your certainly working life, you don't really have time necessarily to sit around and wait for those dividends or be able to weather the ups and downs of shares because, as you say, they're riskier. They're not.
What angers people most is the glaring double standard. Ordinary citizens see decades of pension savings treated as taxable estates, and a modest home in a rising market can trigger crippling inheritance taxes. Yet Reeves shielded her wealth using the very loopholes she claimed to oppose. The hypocrisy cuts deep. She left the inheritance tax threshold frozen at $325,000 even as house prices soared, expanded the rules to include pensions, no matter how modest, and doubled the number of estates affected from 5% to 10% in a single year, all while quietly planning an escape route for herself.
When I was in opposition, before they took over, so I used to say nice things about Rachel Reeves, a good, sensible woman, and she's still a very nice woman, and good and sensible. She's as boring as her Prime Minister, but that's a problem for the whole government. But she really disappointed me. It was bound to be an unpopular budget. She'd made this stupid promise not to use the normal toolbox of every chancellor. Mm-hmm. Apparently she wasn't going to raise income tax, she wasn't going to raise VAT, she wasn't going to raise national insurance, corporation tax. That's 70% of the revenue.
So it was the mistakes in the election.
Enormous taxes on employers. I would have raised, I think, VAT and fuel tax. So I'd have been hated, I'd have needed police protection. But in the national interest, that's what you're working towards in the first budget. And you don't put, in the present state of the economy, a big tax on employment in the way she has. The farmers, well, I'm rather on her.
The Treasury's own forecasts had warned what was coming. An extra 121,000 families each year facing crushing tax bills, hitting builders, tradespeople and savers. Those who spent their lives doing the right thing, now punished for being responsible. Meanwhile, Reeves quietly moved her assets behind legal barriers. One judge reportedly called her setup a deliberate manipulation of the rules she imposed on others. This wasn't just ethically questionable, it was a calculated strategy to dodge the consequences of her own policies. Now, those consequences are crashing down. The Supreme Court's ruling doesn't merely freeze Reeves's fortune, it shatters Labour's narrative on tax fairness. For months, she was portrayed as the champion of working-class justice, the woman set to rebalance the system in favour of the many. But the truth has completely inverted that image.
Asking the public for 40 billion tax rises, can you at least reassure people there are no more tax rises after this?
Well, I've committed to just have one budget a year. I'm not coming back to this in the spring.
Parliament.
No, I'm not going to make commitments to never change taxes again. That would be irresponsible. But this is a once-in-a-Parliament budget to wipe the slate clean after the mess that the Conservatives have left us.
Just final question.
Labour's flagship policy has turned into a lightning rod for public fury. What was pitched as a tax on the rich is instead crushing middle-class households, while those crafting the law quietly slipped out the side door. The revelation that Reeves rooted her own family's assets while urging everyone else to comply is being called one of the worst breaches of public trust in recent memory, and the fallout is far from over. Calls for a full investigation are growing, with MPs demanding inquiry into how far this pattern of double standards reaches. Was Reeves acting alone, or is this the tip of a much larger problem? The public response has been explosive. Across social media, phone-ins, and community forums, people aren't just angry, they feel betrayed. Many had already reshaped life plans in good faith, selling family homes, restructuring pensions, or preemptively gifting assets to avoid ruin, all under the belief that the rules were applied fairly. Now the message is clear. Fairness doesn't extend to those at the top. Entrepreneurs are among the loudest critics, warning that harsher, unpredictable inheritance taxes are forcing many small business owners to abandon plans to pass their companies to the next generation. Why risk losing 40% of everything they built overnight? This scandal goes beyond one estate. It's about trust in leadership, about a government preaching sacrifice while quietly making exceptions for itself, and about what happens when those making the rules think they're too important to follow them. The moment marks a turning point not just for Rachel Reeves, but for Labour's economic vision. Her policies weren't merely harsh, they came wrapped in promises of integrity, shared burden, and leading by example. That illusion has been shattered. The Supreme Court's ruling establishes a legal precedent that could challenge similar schemes by other officials. For months, Reeves framed her policy as a crackdown on privilege, insisting the wealthiest should carry more of the burden. Yet legal analysts now describe her financial setup as textbook strategic avoidance, with overseas trusts and asset transfers timed just before major tax changes. The court concluded her arrangements weren't just clever, they were deliberately structured to dodge the system she helped design. Her estate is now under full review, with real estate and retirement holdings frozen for assessment. What enrages the public most is the double standard ordinary citizens see decades of pension savings and modest homes taxed heavily, while Reeves shields her wealth through the very loopholes she claimed to oppose. She left the inheritance tax threshold frozen at $325,000 as house prices soared, included pensions in taxable estates, and doubled the number of estates affected from 5% to 10% in a single year, all while quietly planning her own escape route.
The trouble when I was in opposition, before they took over, they used to say nice things about Rachel Reeves, a good, sensible woman, and she's still a very nice woman, and good and sensible. She's as boring as her Prime Minister, but that's a problem for the whole government. But she really disappointed me. It was bound to be an unpopular budget. She'd made this stupid promise not to use the normal toolbox of every Chancellor. Mm-hmm. Apparently she wasn't going to raise income tax, she wasn't going to raise VAT, she wasn't going to raise national insurance, corporation tax. That's 70% of the revenue.
So it was the mistakes in the election.
Enormous taxes on employers. I would have raised, I think, VAT and fuel tax. So I'd have been hated, I'd have needed police protection. But in the national interest, that's what you're working towards in the first budget. And you don't put, in the present state of the economy, a big tax on employment in the way she has. The farmers, well, I'm rather on her.
Insiders suggest an internal audit may be launched, but for many voters it's already too late. The damage is done. As the story unfolds, one thing feels certain: Reeves's image as a crusader for tax fairness has collapsed. In its place stands a cautionary tale of double standards, broken trust, and a policy that appeared to punish the many while shielding the few. Thanks for watching. We'll continue tracking developments as more details emerge. Don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more verified updates. This has been Britain Info. Stay informed.